Right, okay. Never worked with technology. Thank you, Craig. So I've got half an hour to talk to you about some of the things that are going on at IIMS, particularly some of the activities we're involved with, not all of them directly associated with the Institute, but some of the other areas that we get involved with, and we are active on a huge number of fronts. I also want to talk to you about some of the member benefits. I'm always surprised about the number of members I meet who say, well, I don't really know what I get for my money. And when you actually list it all out, it's a huge long list of benefits that members can take advantage of. We don't force anything down people's throats, but I sometimes think members are not totally aware of what is on offer. So I hope to be able to, over the next half hour, give you a flavour of what's going on at head office. And I'd like to start by just talking about the new permanent head office. So those of you who don't know Murrell's house, this is the building over here on the left. We've been in residence there for 9 years now. It's a 500-year-old, 7-bedroom originally mansion. It was the big mansion in Porchester going back years ago. It has a fabulous past. If you've not read the report magazine, I've taken quite a long time with quite a lot of difficulty to try and pull together the history. It's a really fascinating history. We have a ghost. We have all sorts. It's all in the report magazine. You've got a copy of the report magazine. So do go and have a read about the place. The decision was taken. I moved into a conversation with our landlord, Cass and Beckman, who have the downstairs of the building, at the end of last year. And he said to me, what are your thoughts about your lease when it comes up? And I said, well, the members have said they'd like to buy somewhere. So we're probably going to give you notice and go and buy somewhere. And he said, don't be too hasty. And I said, what do you mean, Steve? He said, well, I'm 62. I'm looking for an exit strategy. I might be interested in selling the building to you. And my immediate response was, that's very kind of you. We couldn't possibly afford this building. He said, don't you be so sure. Well, then there was nothing for about a month. And he came back and he said, well, we've had the building valued. We think it's worth this. And I said, I think we can afford that. And it was a simple dialogue, really, that sort of moved on from there. We then had to look at getting the deposit together. We're looking for a 75% mortgage, so we have to find 25%. We pretty much have that deposit together now in the bank. We've still got to sort out things like stamp duty, which is an irksome English tax. That's going to cost us some money and so on. But what we have now agreed, and I was in dialogue on Friday with the landlord, is that we're going to move to an early exchange of contracts, perhaps within the next 3 to 4 weeks, with a view to a completion in Q1 2020. So what the contract effectively will say when we exchange is that, assuming we are successful in getting the mortgage application, and I have to say there is no reason why we won't, we've checked all of that stuff, we know we are good for a mortgage, so they will be obligated to sell to us and we will be obligated to buy. So it's very, very exciting news. And I think it underpins the whole future of this organisation, because to have a half-acre chunk of real estate in Hampshire, you know, we've got 20 parking spaces, we've got a nice garden to the side, is very, very exciting. And the most exciting thing for me is that our current landlords will become our tenants. So they are prepared to grant, or we will grant them a 10-year lease. So there will be income coming into the Institute, which will more than, in fact, be more than what we will be spending in the outgoing on our mortgage payments. So we're going to make a little bit of profit off the deal as well. It's a bit of a no-brainer at the end of the day, but it's very, very exciting. And 5 years ago, I can't possibly have imagined ever to being in this situation. So really, just to reiterate what Zaria was saying, it's not really a begging bowl. I don't like to think we've got a begging bowl out, but Zaria's right. If you've had pleasure out of your membership of IIMS and feel you would like to give something back, then I would really welcome those donations. I currently have £1,252 to be exact in the bank from those who've given us a little bit of money in the last few days. My thanks to them, both of them in the room. Thank you, gentlemen. What do we want to do with that money? Well, it's a lovely old building. Old buildings need a little bit of maintenance. My office is the one up on the top left. Hilary and her team work in the office on the top right. The windows are rotten. You can't see that. And those windows are not going to be cheap to repair because they're bespoke, and it's a grade 2 listed building, which means It has to be done in a way that's sympathetic and so on. So there are issues, but as I said, what building doesn't need some maintenance doing to it? All buildings require maintenance. So that's what we'd like to put any funds that you donate through to it. Anybody who does make a donation will get a founder's plaque, which Craig has managed to source this type of design here. It's a sort of a wood effect. We'll put your name on there, and we're going to mount them in the boardroom. So your name, if you choose to give some money, will be there forevermore in, what's the word? Perpetuity? Thank you, I had to scrap for that word. So you're going to be hearing a lot about this. We're going to leave this open for the next 9 months until the end of March next year. And Zaria is right, any donation, doesn't matter how small, really is gratefully appreciated. So thank you. Let me just crash through some of the stuff that goes on at head office. You've got several of my colleagues here today. I'll be referencing them later as we go through, and also at the AGM tomorrow. We embarked on a program to move to a paperless society. We used a very ancient database called ACT, which was rotten in 2000 and has never got any better since then. So we've had a bespoke database written for us by our IT specialist, Amica. It has been slow progress. I thought, honestly, one day we would just turn off ACT and move to a paperless world. That hasn't happened. That said, we have our education now. All of our education program is paperless. CAM and her membership is probably 75% paperless, a little bit of work to do. And we're moving our certifying authority that way as well. They're probably also 75% of the way there. This means, of course, storing things in the cloud, making sure we back up stuff, all of those things. And Zaria was very quick to point out, we must do some risk assessments to make sure that our data can't go missing and so on. So we're very aware of all of that. So I suspect by the end of this year, we'll be paperless, and we're following on with Marine Surveying Academy as well. Hilary and her team will follow on that route. We're using something called Zoho Creator. If you don't know the Zoho Creator platform, it's fabulous. It's a drag and drop system. Very, very neat piece of software. We've been working hard on doing some management board succession planning. There are some changes coming. I'm not going to necessarily reference those today, but I will later. So we are in the process of finding 3 new board members. We've done that. We'll be asking the people at the AGM tomorrow to ratify our selections. Lorna Robinson has joined us at HQ. She replaced Kath, who was with us for about 18 months. Lorna's settling in. She is now running our whole education program, our online professional qualifications, and she's running our events for us and so on. Tanya Bernice, who runs our certifying authority, has handed a resignation in recently. She was our certifying authority administrator, been with the business 4.5 years. And without giving too much away, Dave is at the back. We're quite sure Dave is going to take on that role, having understudied her for the last year. So Dave, congratulations to you. Jen, some of you will have encountered Jen. If you don't pay your bill, we're quite hot these days on chasing down unpaid debts. And Jen joined us as management accountant last year. She's really lifted the game. She really has moved us to a whole level in terms of the way we account for the business. Jen's on maternity leave. She gave birth to baby Jude a couple of weeks ago. But she's telling me she's back on the 27th of July. That's the shortest maternity leave I've ever come across. So but that's her decision, and we're looking forward to welcoming her back soon. A little bit on membership, steady at about 1,000 members. It's actually a little bit less than that. Chris Kelly will be giving a report tomorrow, but still growing. We had to make the fairly painful decision to write off, I think, Chris, it was 55 full members who simply hadn't paid their bill. And there comes a point when, you can say to people, please pay your bill, please pay your bill. If you don't pay your bill, we're going to suspend you, which we did. And then we effectively take them out of the organisation. You can't have people who don't pay their bills. Some of those bills went back 2 years. So we've been a bit ruthless. And it's funny, when you get a bit ruthless, suddenly people appear with a cheque and some money. It's funny how that happens. So we are much more stringent than we used to be. So it is correct. We now have members in 105 countries. The last time I addressed an audience, it was 98. I'm not quite sure what countries we've added, but we're well past the 100 mark, which is brilliant. Full members, still the biggest category, running at close to 600. And we are doing a lot of below-the-line targeted marketing now. We've generated about 1,500 expressions of interest from our below-the-line marketing work using things like LinkedIn and Facebook and all the things you know and love to hate. And that has generated a huge amount of interest. So we're working our way through those. They're not applications for membership. They're people who said, I'm a marine surveyor, I'd like to know more. So we've now got the leads. We now have to work through those leads and so on. But it is generating quite a lot of interest. A little bit on our new membership benefits, the Marine Surveyor Search app. You're going to hear a lot more about that later on. Any practicing member who can take an instruction for survey is on the app. So people who aren't on the app are retired members, supporting members, anyone who can't take an instruction. But if you are an active Marine Surveyor, you are on that app. And Michelle will show us later, I hope, assuming technology is on our side, how it all looks and how it works. One of the things that always surprised me is that safety briefings, there are so many safety briefings issued in this profession that you'll work in. Accident incident reports from all of the, I mean, we work closely with the MAIB, but the MAIB is, you know, across all the world, there's MAIBs. And I could never find a resource where you could go and gather all of this information. We created a very simple web page. On that web page are something like, I think there's 350 or 400 incident reports, accidents, all sorts of things. It's a fabulous resource. It's freely available. You just need to go and find the safety briefings page on the website and you can have a field day if you're interested. We also launched training podcasts. These are audio files that we've made at various training days on all sorts of subjects and materials for small craft surveyors, commercial ship surveyors, people involved in offshore inspection and auditing. There are currently now 40. I think there's about 37 hours of audio available. That is a password protected page on the website, but is popular and is well visited. Last year, I had communication from a small craft surveyor, quite close to the office, who was a little bit downbeat when he spoke to me. He said, I've got a bill for £2,000 from Getty Images. And I said, oh dear, what have you done? He said, I've downloaded an image from the internet and I got caught. He put it onto his website thinking it was a nice photo, and Getty, because Getty are very good at this, said, that's our photo. You haven't bought that, so you haven't got the license. Here's our bill for £2,000. You cannot resist the bill. You have to pay the bill. So the first warning is, if you download or use images, please make sure that they are copyright free. That got me thinking. We have now established a free photo bank. There are 500 royalty-free images. Any member is entitled to log in. Again, it's a password protected page on the website. You can download any of the 500 images. There's a whole raft of stuff there. You can crop them, you can resize them, you can do whatever you like with them. So it's well worth, if you've not yet had a chance to look at that, then please do. Just need to pay a nod, obviously, continuing professional development, really, really important. Still, 50% of members don't engage with the CPD process. I think that is a challenge. I think it's something we still need to do to engage with people. It's all managed by the CPD app, which again was built by Rushin and the guys out in Goa at EDOT Solutions. You can be sitting in the audience today, you can just log into the app, you can claim your 5 points for today, easy to do. And I found it, I was saying to the board yesterday, I had a board meeting yesterday, I find it slightly strange. We had a lot of people who got 7, 8, 9 points coming right up to the deadline. And I started emailing those people saying, you know, you only need 1 or 2 more points to get your badge and to make you CPD compliant. And they didn't do it. And I just thought that was very strange. Why would you get 8 points? You only need 10 and then not go and find an activity, because you're all doing CPD. You just don't necessarily sometimes know you're doing CPD. So please, you know, it is important, and it tells the rest of the world that you are current. Dave, who's sitting at the back there very modestly and calmly, monitors all of the CPD applications. We had something like 1,200 claims made last year. Fantastic. I think Dave declined about 200 of them, something like that. So keep those claims coming in, please. Very, very valuable. Just to talk a little bit about professional qualifications. We've had a very, very strong run over the last 18 months. The professional qualifications that we run are all distance learning, one for commercial ship, one for small craft. A number of you in this room I know have actually gone through those programs. We currently have 170 students enrolled. We are starting now to put on tutorials. We never used to do that. This is relatively new. Simply asking people to come online. We'll do a little introduction. It's all done from HQ. John Noble has joined us to do a couple of those. Kerry Goldsworthy has joined us to do a couple of those. In fact, I set them up to do a half-hour session on naval architecture, which is module 3, the one that most students find the hardest. And Kerry came online. He lives quite close to the office. He came online. There were about 8 or 9 students who joined it. And I said, well, we've got half an hour. 3.5 hours later, they were still talking about naval architecture. I'd long lost the will to live and moved on, but they were just having a great time. So it's all part and parcel of what we do. I just got some questions coming in here. I just want to have a look and see what people are asking on the chat. So bear with me. Okay, I've got some questions about the app. I've got 1 or 2 people who are struggling to hear, someone who can hear very well. So, okay, I'm going to press on. We've worked with the Inland Waterways module. Mog, who is I think he might be our oldest member, Mog. Thank you for bringing the Inland Waterways module up to date. I know we've worked through the assessment for that. And Unit 1, which is an introduction to marine surveying, needed a bit of a makeover. I'm just working my way through that. Now my screen's frozen, Craig. I think it's because you answered those questions. Okay, here we go. Complaints about surveyors, something I find particularly painful. Paul Homer, sitting in the audience, chairman of standards, and myself, spend a ridiculous amount of time looking at complaints. They are generally, not always, but generally about UK small craft surveyors, often because the quality of the report writing is not good enough. I don't frankly know what we can do about it other than to keep reminding people of the importance and to offer retraining in things like report writing. Some we cannot defend. There have been 2 this year that absolutely, I will always defend a member. If I get a complaint, my first thing is, how can I push this back? And as some of you will have heard me say before, there are always 2 sides to the story. And quite often, the buyer just doesn't want to pay the bill because he didn't get the news he wanted from the survey. Well, that's life, isn't it? You surveyors are rarely giving out good news to people. It's invariably you're giving out bad news. People don't like that, so they complain. But you can see through those. However, there have been a couple of really, really bad mistakes this year. And Karen, sitting at the back from Matrix, who you'll hear from later, Karen and I had a conversation recently. I know, Karen, you said that you have noticed and noted a sharp increase in high value claims. So we need to be very, very careful of this as an industry, because the outcome from this is that premiums will rise inevitably. If there are a lot of claims that are having to be met, premiums will rise. Karen and I have said we will work together to try and produce a briefing note, hopefully in the next 3 or 4 months when we've both got a bit of time, just to put something out to small craft surveyors particularly. We get no complaints about commercial surveyors, never. But it's all to do with small craft. Just to say, be aware, this is an issue. And if you need some more report writing training, Paul did a mentoring session with a surveyor, an experienced surveyor I might add, last week. Spent 5 or 6 hours. The guy paid, and he said it's the best £350 I've ever paid. Thank you very much. So you're never too old to admit that you need to learn some new skills or refresh your skills. A little bit about the certifying authority. Our certifying authority has started to grow, actually. We've been pretty steady for the last 5 years, but in the last few months, we've noticed some wind farm vessels, particularly coming into our CA, the one surveyor who's very active in that sector, and we've had quite a few transfers coming in from other certifying authorities. So that's all good news. We've just signed a new tonnage agreement with the MCA. Our tonnage work is all carried out through our certifying authority, and we are under contract to the British government through the MCA. I signed that agreement off. It does mean in theory that IIMS is now authorized to do tonnages on vessels over 24 meters. On the face of it, that sounds quite exciting because we can now go mix it with class. But then the MCA said, however, you must only do it on a case-by-case basis, and you'll need to be authorized each time you go and want to do one. So they kind of gave us something, and then they sort of withdrew it. But it is what it is. But it's an understanding that we're doing the right thing. Our tonnage training, which John Excel runs, John's not with us today, apologies from John. It's a brilliant program. It's a half day of theory, then we go and we measure 4 or 5 boats. We've done one of those recently, and they're always popular. And we are now insisting, because the MCA and the new contractor said, you must have put people through an approved training scheme, in other words, an MCA approved training scheme, which we will get ours approved, and all other certifying authorities are required to do the same. We talk about levelling the playing field in developing this common standard for surveyors and a common interpretation. Fraser Noble is doing a lot of work on that score, as indeed am I, but I'll touch on that briefly in a minute. Report magazine, you should all have copies, I think, in your packs. We don't always do that. We don't print many copies these days because it's read digitally and in PDF format. But the most recent issue came out just a couple of weeks ago. Some great content in there. I'm grateful to all those who like to write for us, and I much appreciate those who do. I always come on to the dreaded social media. We do send out a PDF monthly news bulletin. I know half the members read it, half don't. Again, I can't force people to read what we produce. It's quite an in-depth document. You know, it often runs to 12 pages. It's a mini magazine in its own right. So if you don't read that, I would encourage you to open it up and have a look. The website we launched a little while back has just topped 700,000 unique visitors since launch, which is quite remarkable. There are over 1,500 news stories on there. We're publishing content most days, and the average time spent on site is 1 minute 37. That might not sound like a lot, but let me assure you, in website terms, 1 minute 37 is a long time. So it's a sticky site, and it's a huge resource. We have 1,600 Twitter followers, and we have 3,700 on LinkedIn. Many of you in this room, I'm sure, follow us on LinkedIn. If you don't, I would encourage you to do so. One of the hits of last year, which took everybody by surprise, was the Marine Surveying International Fest 2018, as it was. That was a rolling 24-hour extravaganza of everything you wanted to know about marine surveying. So we ran one live presentation on the hour, every hour. Several in the room who were involved in that, actually. So thank you for doing that. It was great fun. We had to work right through the night, which wasn't so much fun, but we had lots of pizzas coming in, and Cam and I went and dossed down in the room next door in a camp bed, and it was fine. But I'm going to split it for next year, so we're actually going to, what are you laughing? Not on the same camp bed. No, so we each had our own camp bed. So we're going to split it in 2019. So there will be on December the 10th, a 12-hour fest, starting probably at 7 in the morning, UK time, and running through till 7 at night for small craft surveyors. So 12 presentations, one every hour on the hour. And then there'll be another 12 on the 12th of December. I encourage you all to take part. It's not expensive to join. It's all delivered electronically. I think we had speakers from 7 countries last time, from Canada and America in the West, right over to Singapore, Australia in the East. So it was great fun to do. You get a copy of all the videos that we produce as well. Interesting enough, I put NAMS and SAMS on there, which, James, you'll be interested to know. We had quite a lot of members from NAMS and SAMS join us. That was a bonus. And we got into a bit of a dialogue about how we would record the time people had spent online for their CE points. So that was interesting. So there's evidence that we are starting to work more closely with these organizations. We've brought a raft of handy guides. This was an initiative that I kicked off, I don't know, 3 years ago now. Been fabulously successful. We've now just launched our 20th handy guide, which is the fabulously titled Paint Failure, Corrosion and Rectification. That's the biggest one we've produced at 224 pages. You can buy these in paperback format, or you can buy them online as downloadable PDFs. We sell quite a lot, and most days we get an order or two, and I just think it's a very valuable extra service that we offer people. Talk very briefly about some of the external involvements that I alluded to earlier. We sit on the MCA's Technical Interpretation Forum, which, as I say, Fraser Noble is heavily involved with. Those guys are performing a really valuable job now. After the Cheeky Rafiki case, which really caused the MCA all sorts of major problems, they're looking at redeveloping all of the existing codes, and we have a seat at that table to ensure that we have our say. I've been chair of the Certifying Authority Professional Standards Working Group for 3 years now. It's been difficult. It's not been an easy process. We are trying to bring all of the CAs together with a common code leading to a certification for anybody who performs a coding. There aren't that many coding surveyors. I think there's maybe 130 or 140 around the world, but we all the certifying authorities apply a different criteria to how they operate, and that simply has to stop. And that's agreed now. So Hilary represented me at a meeting recently where we talked about what the training might look like, what the certification, or how the training would lead to a certification. We have a meeting on the 3rd of July to bring all of the main stakeholders, which all the other certifying authorities, back to the table to say, right, let's nail down a budget, let's work out and understand how we're going to do it. I've also been, for the last 18 months, actively involved in developing an apprenticeship scheme for marine surveying. There's only 2 of us who are left standing now from those original meetings. Everyone else has dropped out. Recently, I was at a one-day meeting in Liverpool at John Moores University, and we spent the whole day looking at the learning outcomes. This effectively is a 4-year scheme. You'll come out with a degree. And I might add, this is not really for people who are aged 19 and 20 and 21. This is for people older who are coming into it, who want to develop a career in marine surveying. We've got to the point where it is now with the UK government. They are assessing it for funding. It's called a Trailblazer scheme. I suspect we'll get funding. If I have reservations about it, there's nothing wrong with the program. It's going to be a brilliant program. My reservations are how many people are going to want to study this, because I think it's quite niche. So I think that's why the main universities disappeared quite early, because they looked at it and said, well, we're never going to get thousands of people doing this. And they're right, they're not. And I'm not quite sure who is going to employ somebody once they've come through. Those are my concerns. But we have at least got it to a point where now it's likely to get government funding. I work very closely, as does IIMS, with the Small Craft Surveyors Forum, which is built up of the professional bodies, Nautical Institute involved in that, IIMS, RENA, CMS, YDSA, MECAL, RYA, and ourselves. We meet quarterly. We've just delivered our showpiece event last week at Seawork, which was an afternoon of 3 seminars, which were fabulously well attended. Actually, there were a lot of people there, which was great fun. I'm just working now more and more to get other membership organizations around the table. 5 years ago, unthinkable. Everybody just drew up the drawbridge and said, no, you're a competitor. We don't want to have any dialogue with you. My reaction was, well, that's not very mature in this day and age. We can actually all help each other. It isn't about trying to pinch votes from each other for the certifying authority. It isn't about trying to pinch members from other organizations. It's just about saying collectively, we have a responsibility for the world of marine surveying. Let's at least talk and do something together rather than against, which leads me nicely into the next slide. You as members, those of you who are members, voted at the AGM last year to get us to develop a marine surveyor practitioner accreditation scheme. Hilary and I have worked tirelessly on this over the last year. We haven't said too much, but we are moving now towards being close to making an announcement, a formal announcement. I picked this internet image up, and it is royalty free before you ask me, so I'm okay to use it. And I thought the black hole was quite appropriate, because actually none of us quite know what's going to happen until we go through that black hole. And the black hole is the accreditation scheme. Until we go live and we put it out there, this is not just a scheme for IIMS members. As an IIMS member, you'll get a discount to come through the process. But it is about objectively assessing the competency of people to do their work. And I think it's long overdue. We've spoken to, I'm not going to put more on now, but we've spoken to a lot of P&I clubs. In fact, Peregrine, you and I had a conversation about it. The support that I received was just purely positive from everybody. Nobody said that's a really bad idea. Everybody said that's a really good idea. Good luck, because it's one hell of a task. And it is one hell of a task, but I think we're going to be in a position to roll something out, looking at Hilary now, in the first quarter of next year. So exciting times. I just want to change. I've got 5 minutes. I want to spend 5 minutes just talking about Hilary's work and the Marine Surveying Academy. For those of you who don't know, Marine Surveying Academy is the wholly owned subsidiary of IIMS. Paul Homer is its director, along with Hilary and myself. We are the 3 executive directors. Essentially, we work in 3 sectors that we are particularly interested in, and we provide standard solutions for niche marine sectors. That's what I've called the slide. So, international registered marine insulation inspectors. It's a bit of a mouthful, is IRMI. Very niche. The ECMID program, which is now 4 years old, which we run on behalf of IMCA, and RMCI registered marine coatings inspectors. Those are our primary markets. I have a slide on each. The IRMI sector went horribly quiet 5 years ago after the crash, the oil price crash. The whole market seemed to just collapse. Wood Group Kenny used to run the standard. Wood Group Kenny effectively imploded and then got taken over by somebody, and all the people involved with that sector just vanished. So we had about 100 people who'd come through the program, done the 1-week course, done the examination. We've now started to reactivate it. Things have definitely improved in that sector. We can't find all the 100 people who came through originally. Maybe we've got half of them back, or half of them we're in touch with, or half have just left the industry and gone. So we are starting the process now of reaccrediting those people. We have worked with Andy Blake, who was the original course tutor and who wrote the original content. He's rewritten the content. I'm working with his partner in crime, Helen. I've forgotten her surname. Helen Boyd, thank you. We are taking this back to market. What's changed is that we used to only provide the examination element for this, but now we are going to be managing the whole program for these guys. Very exciting, and Hillary has potentially 3 courses for external candidates, and it looks like we're running a course for Van Ord and also for Allseas. So those will be in-house courses. Very exciting, and watch this space, but that's surging back into life. IIMCI is a very strange beast. I mean, just to remind you why we developed this, the scheme was developed to upskill people who were surveying complex super yacht coating systems. Some of you know these days there are 12, 13, 14 coats going on these mega yachts now. It's crazy. It's a huge percentage of the actual build cost of a vessel. And as many as half of them coming out of the sheds historically were subject to litigation because the owner didn't like the look of it. So there was a problem in the industry. Working with industry, IIMS, Super Yacht Builders Association, we developed a standard. About 120 have now gone through that process. It all went very quiet on us last year. We thought the market had peaked. We thought we'd matured. And then suddenly Hillary's been rushed off her feet this year again with people saying, no, you know, the next phase, the next generation now moving in. So we've just run a big course in Amsterdam with 16 people. We're likely to be running one in the States, probably in Florida. We're certainly going to be doing one, I hope, down in Australia, and probably another one in Europe. So it's coming back. What's very exciting about this is that the RMCI standard is now recognized, and it's set as part of the ISO standard. So RMCI is deemed to be acceptable as far as the ISO standard is concerned. I think that's incredibly powerful, and we should be very proud of that. The eCMID scheme, again, something else we should be very proud of. You know, when I started talking to IMCA 5 years ago, this offshore inspection auditing process was pretty much a bit of a wild west. You know, nobody knew who was getting on board these vessels to do these things. Nobody knew if they were competent. The guy who was doing jack-up vessel inspections, who was also a pizza delivery man, you know, that just didn't strike us as being very good. And that's a true story, by the way. So looking back now, 4 years on, it's extraordinary what we've done. We've had 600 people who have applied for accreditation. We have 460 who've come through that process. The scheme has teeth. You know, Hillary has the power, and her team have the power to turn off someone's registration just like that. You know, if they don't do what they have to do as part of the scheme. We are quite, you know, bullish about it all. And with IMCA, we've forged, I think, a really strong relationship, a very strong alliance with them. We've run 30 training courses. I think it might be more than 30 training courses. I might be a little out of date there. We're organising regular seminars. We've one here on Wednesday after our day tomorrow. And then we're out in Singapore doing another follow-up. And then we're out in Amsterdam. We're doing a renewables day seminar in Amsterdam. And this has been a fabulous piece of work. And we've just signed a new 5-year contract with IMCA. They're thrilled with what we do. We work very closely now with the IMCA committee. That wasn't the case when we started out. We would get invited as sort of strangers to the table, whereas now we are part of that committee and we contribute to that committee. So we're actively involved in driving things forward. I'm conscious that I'm at my allotted time. I'm happy to take any questions. There's an opportunity. I'm around, obviously, for the next 2 days. If any of you want to come and have a chat with me on any matter at any time, then please do. But otherwise, for now, thank you very much for your attention.